Welcome to Üretim Bandı Teknik. Welcome to Üretim Bandı podcast. I'm Ender Ahmet Yurt. My guest is today Johan Kihlbom.
Nice. Good job pronouncing that. That's not very easy to pronounce.
Really?
Unless you're Swedish.
Yeah, I have been learning Swedish via Duolingo. Maybe you know that.
Yeah.
But before the recording podcast, you taught me how can I pronounce your surname, Kihlbom or...
Yeah, perfect. That's very good.
Thank you very much. But I will pronounce you as call you CJ.
CJ is good. That works easier in English than call you one.
Yeah, I'm working as a developer in Teamtailor, and CJ is the senior product manager in Teamtailor.
Yeah, prefer to just call it product manager. The senior part just means that I'm old. So,
okay.
Just product manager.
CJ, the product manager. Okay. So, but today we are two Teamtailor co-workers here in Antalya. By the way, welcome to Turkey.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be back in Turkey. This is my second visit to Turkey now. The first visit was for our first team work away that we have here at Teamtailor in Istanbul, which we did about a year ago in November last year. And I loved my first visit to Turkey. It was absolutely amazing. So I'm super happy to be back now and to see a different part of Turkey as well. And yeah, lots more to explore that I'm looking forward to. More visits in the future.
Yeah, actually, it's nice. We have been Antalya I am in Antalya for 2 days, but you more than 1 day.
Yeah, I arrived a little bit early during the weekend and had some time to explore on my own and with our colleague Melike, who lives here. So we took a nice tour of Old Town here in Antalya and had some really nice dinner as well. Excellent food and good company. So it's been a really nice trip so far. And then we got a lot of colleagues from Sweden and another Turkish colleague from Ankara who came as well on Monday. So now there are 9 of us here together in Antalya for this week, spending time in an Airbnb in Old Town that we rented here and working together during the days and then going out for really nice meals in the evenings and spending time together in person since we all work remotely or most of us work remotely in some way. It's a distributed team where people work from lots of different locations. So it's very nice to have this opportunity to meet up in person.
Exactly. It's so nice, but we call it workaways. Maybe we can talk about the details about it during the podcast. But first we are here two team members in Teamtailor. Today, actually, I know what we gonna talk and I know the answers, but I will act strangers. It's like act what is Teamtailor and what we are using for the backends or something like this. So the CJ will answer my questions. Okay, but the first, maybe we can start with explaining yourself. Yep. CJ, can you tell about yourself a bit, not details?
Yeah, I am originally a developer. I started building websites and web applications in 1997, I think it was.
I was in primary school.
So that tells you a little bit about how old I am, maybe. In 2005, I discovered Ruby on Rails shortly after it was launched and fell absolutely in love with it and never looked back from that. I've been sticking with Ruby on Rails since then. At that point, I was working as a one-man agency, you could say. So I was doing full projects by myself, both the development and the design. And I did that for about 10 years and got really tired after that of working by myself. And so I started building a team and started hiring more developers and designers and built an agency called eLabs. And we invested heavily in the Ruby and Rails community, which we loved as well. So we organized a conference called Nordic Ruby, which we held for, I think, 6 years maybe in Sweden. And we invested a lot in open source. We developed popular open source libraries like Capybara and Carrier Wave and Pundit. Pundit is probably the biggest one now, even though it's the smallest library that we ever did.
I have to interrupt you, and I realized it was very late for me because I was looking something and I realized that, and you made the Pundit. Maybe I saw it on your GitHub or something.
Yeah, I also.
I was happy and I shocked, by the way. Oh, I know the guy who start these, because I know Pandat, Careerway, and other ones.
Yeah.
But the Pandat is the favorite one in that.
And my contribution to those projects were definitely not the code. That was primarily one of our developers that we had, Jonas Niklas, who is an amazing developer and initiated those projects and really brought them to life. But for me, running the company, the most important contribution that I could do was try to support that work and try to create space for it and help promote it as well. So I was super proud to be part of a company where we kind of gave birth to these great projects, but mostly I was proud to be able to work together with great colleagues like Jonas, who created these, and the other developers that helped contribute to them as well. But yeah, that was a really fun time. But after 10 years of running that agency, we were acquired by a product company based in Stockholm in Sweden. And I went from being CEO of the agency to taking the role as head of HR in this product company. And that might seem strange from the outset. A developer turned CEO who then became head of HR. But actually it felt very natural, because when you're running an agency, the most important things in that company are the people and the culture. That is, in an agency, also the product in many ways. So that's what I was spending most of my time focusing on, supporting in the agency. And so it felt very natural to then become the head of HR, or the VP of people and culture, as the actual title was, where I could focus on just supporting the people and the culture within this product company instead. And so the main difference in that role was that I no longer had to do like sales. So that was actually really nice. But during that time, and actually before that as well, when I started eLabs, we of course were recruiting people, and I knew some people that had started a new company building a recruitment platform called Teamtailor. And so I became one of the very first users of that product and really liked it. And then when I took the role as head of HR, I was using it super heavily on a daily basis, basically, because most of the time I spent recruiting and hiring new people for the team. And so I loved using the Teamtailor product, and I really, really liked the people behind it. They were great people. And I learned more over time about how they were actually building the product as well. As a user, I was super impressed of how they were able to release a lot of great new features at a really high pace, even though the software, at that point was 8, 9, 10 years old. They still kept releasing a lot of new stuff very quickly, which from my own work as a developer in projects, I knew how hard it was to keep up that momentum as a product grows, as a team grows, and as things just get a little bit older in the code base. So I was super impressed by that. The last thing I did in my role as head of HR, which was the spring of 2022, so about a year and a half ago, the economy, as we all know, took a turn for the worse. And we were a startup that did not yet have a good product market fit. We were still very reliant on external venture capital. And when that capital dried up, we had to do big layoffs in the team. So I had to lay off half the company, 30 people out of 60 people, including myself, because my role as head of HR and focusing mostly on recruiting and increasing the size of a team.
What was the name of the company?
The company's name was Valerie.
Valerie, before Teamtailor.
It was also a HR tech company, which was interesting. So it was in a related space, but not focused on recruiting, more focused on onboarding and supporting team members in a company with access to great tools, like making sure that everyone had the equipment that they needed, the laptops, the phones, the accessories, and so on.
I see.
Streamlining that whole process from both an employee experience perspective and from a company admin perspective. So that was Valerie. And I knew that, as head of HR, it was my responsibility to make sure that we had the best possible team for the situation that the company was in. And in that new situation, I knew that my role was not one of the most important ones to keep in the company. And so I made my role part of the layoffs as well. And in doing that, I also reached out to a lot of my contacts in the industry, because I'd spent 4 years trying to build a really great team, had hired some great people. And now when a lot of them were going to be looking for new jobs, I tried to introduce them to as many connections as possible in the industry to help them find new good jobs. And I reached out to Teamtailor because I knew those people there and I knew that was a good company. So I said, you have a great bunch of people here. You should really try to hire some of them. And they actually did, which I was super happy about. But they also asked me, okay, so what are you going to do next? And so that's how I ended up at Teamtailor, because it felt like all of the different pieces of my career fell into place at Teamtailor. I knew I enjoyed my time working in HR, but I knew that I really wanted to get back into product development. I really missed being part of the product team and working day to day to build and improve a product. I really liked working with HR tools, though. I liked that focus on combining technology with kind of the human experience. So that felt like a great fit as well. And I knew the product from having used it for 10 years. So I was one of our customers basically as well. So I could understand our customers in a good way. And I knew that the team was great and the way they worked was really, really interesting to me. And I'm sure we can talk more about that as well, how we actually build the product at Teamtailor. But so it felt like all of those pieces fell into place at Teamtailor. So I was super happy to make that choice and to land here. Yeah,
to be honest, it's the first time I talked with the Joachim Hollander. I said right.
Yeah, so, exactly.
And
our colleague who's the head of product here at Teamtailor, or one of our heads of product.
One of them, yeah. And he said we will hire a new man, and but we don't know the title of him. Yeah. So I was thinking you was going to be an engineering manager or something like that, because we don't have a manager title. Exactly. Maybe we can talk about why we don't have managers. Managers later. But you turned to senior product manager, but your another responsibility, like doing interview with candidates, like Joachim does. But I don't understand is your title is product manager, but the product manager is the managing the product.
Yeah.
But you are trying to building a culture and hiring people. And can you explain how it's?
Well, so as you know,
I know.
We don't really put much focus on titles at Teamtailor.
Exactly.
So we have an amazing product team we're 49 people now, I think, and 35 something developers, and all of those developers have the title developer.
Yeah.
And the average professional experience in the product team is more than 13 years. So, I mean, if they were working at any other company, they would have titles like senior developer, staff developer, or staff engineer, or lead developer, or things like that. But at Teamtailor, everyone's just developer. And so for my role, the senior product manager role is kind of a bullshit title. It's not a bullshit role, but it's a bullshit title in many ways, and it's not important. But what I do is both focus on the product itself with product strategy and shaping new features. So how will we continue to improve the product, setting the direction for that. And as you said, do a lot of recruiting. So I work with the team a lot as well. Recruiting, coaching team members, help support and nurture the culture and how we work within the product team. So similar in many ways to what I was doing when I ran the agency and what I did as head of HR as well. But now it's also combined with that piece that I felt was missing from my previous job, which is to very actively work in the product development itself as well from a product strategy perspective.
As I understood, Yorkas is more focused to developers and the product, and another head of product is Susan. More focused or just focused to product, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So we have two heads of product, which again tells you something about how much effort we put into title. Susan and Yorkas, and Susan is focused on the product strategy and Yorkas is focused on the product team. And my role is basically a combination of both of those. So I split my time about 50-50. But for me, it also feels like they really help support each other, these two things. By still being very active in recruitment, for example, I'm using our own product on a daily basis, which helps me in the product strategy side of things, in the product management side of things, in actually understanding our users, because I am one of them still. So I think that is really important for me, how it becomes like this positive feedback loop where the things I learn from recruiting and working with the team helps feed into the product strategy, which helps me, of course, also, since I'm actively working with our developers and designers in the product management side, that also, of course, helps me with the recruiting to know more of what are the types of skills and traits and so on that we should look for when we hire for the product team. So I really like that combination of being able to do both of those two things.
Yeah, you gave some clues about the Teamtailor while you are talking, but maybe we can make a sentence for Teamtailor. What is Teamtailor? I know.
So Teamtailor is recruitment and employer branding platform. So it's for helping companies build the right teams, basically, by being able to easily communicate what they are about as a company and what the roles they're looking for are about as well, and introduce the team and give candidates a sense of what it's actually like to work in that company. So that's the employer branding side of things, of being able to tell that story to candidates in a good way. And then there's the more kind of hands-on recruitment side of things, where it's an ATS or applicant tracking system, where companies manage the entire recruitment process. So receiving applications from candidates and reviewing those and booking interviews and evaluating candidates along the way and so on, messaging them and all of that stuff. So that's the product.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about a bit about our baby product called Aboard.
Yeah, so Teamtailor as a company and as a product started about 10 years ago, and since then it's been our full focus all the time. Except, I guess, during the pandemic we had a little just hobby project, a hobby product called Teamtailor, but that was never a commercial product.
Yeah.
But a lot of our customers that have been using Teamtailor for recruitment want to know, okay, so what do we do after we've hired someone?
Yeah.
Can we use Teamtailor to help with onboarding them as well? Kind of something that takes over after a candidate has been hired. And for a long time we looked at, okay, do we want to add this into Teamtailor as just kind of added features? But we decided to take a little bit of a different approach and instead create a new product, which is called Aboard, which is more of a general HRIS or HR information system. So it takes over where the candidate journey ends in Teamtailor. Someone's been hired. We have automations to add them automatically to Aboard, where they can then start their onboarding journey. And that's true we have lots of other partners as well, such as Highbob and Bamboo HR and so on. So Aboard is another alternative for those that don't need quite as much as those other more complex HR systems.
Yeah, cool. Aboard is a very nice application because Highbob is good one.
Yep.
It's really look like a Teamtailor. It's not a look like it's fancy, it's colorful like Teamtailor, but the Aboard is our product and I'm proud of using it actually instead Highbob, because it's our. When we need a feedback or something like this, and we can say the product Aboard team, and we need something like that, and luckily they are doing very fast. All right, maybe we can talk about a bit technologies, what we are using, because we don't use lots of different technologies. I know, but maybe you can explain us. The most important one. The
most important one, which I alluded to earlier, of course, is Ruby on Rails. So that is actually how I met the founders of Teamtailor originally. We were part of the early Ruby on Rails community in Sweden back in 2005 and 2006 and so on. So that's where we connected and got to know each other. And of course, they went on to start Teamtailor, and then Ruby on Rails was the natural choice for them for doing that. And that's been the foundation from the start. And that's what we're using for Aboard as well. So even now, 10 years later, when we decided to start a new product, we wanted to use Ruby on Rails for that, because Ruby on Rails is still thriving, even though it's maybe not as hip as it used to be. There are other new shiny technologies, of course, but Ruby on Rails keeps getting better and better every year. There's a lot of effort put into continuing to improve it in the community, and it's still a very strong community, which is exciting. So yeah, that is a great fit for us, because I think that's another interesting or important part about Teamtailor. So we talked about how titles aren't really important, and we don't have, we don't make a big difference between junior or mid-level or senior and so on, but we also don't make a difference between front-end developers or back-end developers. Everyone's a developer. And when everyone's a developer, you want tools that are really flexible and lets you focus on getting the job done in an easy way without having a lot of like specialist knowledge. And Ruby on Rails is a great fit for that. It's a super productive framework. And the creators of Ruby on Rails like to call it the one-man framework or the one-person framework.
Yeah, right.
Because it is so productive that as a single developer, you could use Ruby on Rails to build a really great product because of how productive it lets you be. And that's still very true for us. So with a board, for example, we had one single developer working on that for the longest time, for 1 year, or a little bit more than 1 year actually, until it was a fully commercialized product. And only then, once we saw that it was starting to get traction and getting paying customers, that's when we added a second developer to the team, and they are able to move super quickly with this, just because, well, not they are two very talented developers, so that certainly helps, but they're also greatly helped by how productive they can be with Ruby on Rails. So that's the foundation for Teamtailor. But the Teamtailor app is also a little bit special because of how interactive the applicant tracking system is.
Yeah.
So we use Ember.js for the front end in the applicant tracking system part, which is more like a desktop app in many respects. So we have 3 different front ends for the application. All of them share the same Ruby on Rails backend, but then we have Ember.js as a kind of single page application framework for the applicant tracking system part. So where our customers, our users are working on a daily basis to manage the recruitment process. Then we use standard Rails views with stimulus for the JavaScript and so on for the candidate experience side of our platform. Yeah. So that's where when a candidate visits one of our customers' career sites and browse around the career site and then fill out their application and so on, that's not using Ember.js. That's only using standard Rails views and Stimulus.js. And then finally, we also have a mobile app for our customers that is built using React Native.
Yeah.
And so those 3 front ends all talk to the Ruby on Rails backend.
Yeah, the mobile application is another fancy application which making in Teamtailor.
Yeah.
So I really like to use it because we have a great feature. I don't think so another ATS have this feature because it's Team Stories.
Yeah.
It's something like Instagram Stories, right?
Yeah.
It's a very lovely feature, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it's your idea or is a general idea. I don't know how was born, but
yeah, I think the idea came from lots of different places. I don't think I was alone with having this idea, but it was one of the first projects that I shaped once I started at Teamtailor. So helped kind of set the goals and the direction for the project and kind of the general constraints to help focus it in a good way. And we built that with a small team of 2 developers and 1 designer, which is how we usually work, using the shape up, and built that whole thing in 6 weeks and shipped it to our users. And yeah, it's a favorite feature of mine as well. And like you said, it's simple take on Instagram stories, but the interesting part of it is not the technology or specifics of the feature. It's how it's integrated into our platform and what it lets our users accomplish.
Yeah.
Because when we, like I mentioned, employer branding and letting kind of the company tell its story about what it's about to candidates is one of the important parts of our platform. But when it comes to employer branding, it's easy to fall into the trap of it being a very, marketing centric approach where it doesn't always feel very authentic. because maybe there's like super nice photos that a professional photographer has taken. Maybe the company has invested in creating this super cool company video and so on. And all of that can look great and they can be fun and so on, but it's not always what you're after as a candidate. What you're after as a candidate is often to get a strong feeling of what it's actually like, to hear directly from the employees of that company what it's actually like working there on a regular day or when they're doing fun stuff together. So you want to get the same insight into working at a company as you get into your friends' lives through Instagram stories. And so that's what Team Stories is about. It lets anyone in a company take the simple photos or record a short video, just like Instagram Stories, using the Teamtailor mobile app. And then the company content managers in the company that manage the career site can very easily publish some of those videos to the career site and help bring them to the world, so to speak, so that candidates can get that authentic feeling without the company feeling like it loses control of what is published, of course, because that's important too.
I really love this attitude of the Teamtailor because I don't like to seeing just CEO or the investments images or photos or like that. I think the developers, sales, customers, heroes, I mean, their photos must be in the career, the company's career site. And there should be some blog posts and there should be some photos from their company trips or their company organizations. And this is really good way. I'm really trusting the company when I saw this kind of this because I talked with Teamtailor 2 years ago. Okay, we didn't have this kind of informations, but I found on Instagram or on Twitter or something like this social media platform. I really like this kind of things. And do you know why some companies hiding this kind of things?
No, not really. But I think just from my previous experience of working at eLabs and then Valerie as
because I
HR,
asked you have lots of experience working with this kind of companies, I think.
And in both of those companies, like both of those were quite small startups. So I have no experience working in like a giant company, and I'm sure that's very, very different. But even in small companies that want to be really open, that want to let everyone share their stories and things like that, it's still hard to facilitate that, to make it possible for employees to share that stuff, to give them a platform to do it in a good way. Of course, they can always do stuff on their own personal social media and things like that. And a lot of companies want to encourage their employees to post or to use their own social media for that. But not all people want to use their own social media for that as well, which I can fully understand. But there's a disconnect there where it's either you just post things on your personal social media, but that can feel, a little bit weird sometimes. Not everyone wants to do that. Or you post it through like the company accounts maybe, or on the company website or something like that. But that is often quite hard, or like that there are roadblocks on the way, or you have to get the right access, and then maybe it needs to be vetted somehow, or it can feel like it's not worth the hassle to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what Team Stories is about, is to help bridge that gap, to make it really easy for anyone within the company to just take a quick photo, record a short video, and then to make it really easy for the people who are responsible for the content, so who are managing the career site or the website, for example, to use that as source material to publish on the career site. But given that it's been created already through the Teamtailor app, the employees have already given their permission to have it be shared in social media and stuff like that. So there's not that you reduce a lot of the kind of back and forth needed, where you need to maybe like ask for the content and then ask for permission and so on. So it streamlines the whole process and makes it really easy to both share and to publish the things, which creates, again, a lot of value for the candidates.
Exactly. But exactly. I really like talking about the Teamtailor lovely features, but it's gonna take lots of time, and we can't finish the podcast. So maybe we can talk about a bit details about how we work. You said shape up and 6 week things. What are they?
So
by the way, I know if my bosses listen this and they're asking the silly question, I know, but I'm acting like a stranger.
I understand. That's good that you know. So Ruby on Rails The programming framework was created by a company called 37 Signals. They have a product called Basecamp for project management and a product called Hey for email. And so a lot of the things we like about Ruby on Rails from a technical perspective comes from the company 37 Signals values and ways of working. And they've built Ruby on Rails to be the technology that enables that way of working or supports that way of working. And so we are fully on board with that. We like all of those things, or most of those decisions that they made, at least. So for us, it felt really natural when we learned more about how they work as a company, not in terms of the technology they use, but just kind of the processes they use, like how they communicate internally, how they plan and organize work, and how they make sure to actually ship things. We felt like that matched our way of thinking and our values a lot as well, since it goes hand in hand with what we like with Ruby on Rails. And they started sharing these concepts just through their blog many, many years ago. And I think that Teamtailor started experimenting and adopting that way of working around 7 years ago or something like that now, 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And then what happened, I think maybe it's 3 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago now, the company 37 Signals finally kind of packaged their way of working, gave it a name, and wrote a book about it. And the name of the methodology and the name of the book is Shape Up. So that's just where they describe this way that they've been working forever, and the way that Teamtailor had been working for many years at that point when the book was released also. But the book went into more detail and so on as well. So we were also able to learn more and be inspired there. So basically what it's about is to find the right balance between giving developers and designers, the people actually building the product, as much autonomy as possible, because they are the experts. They are the ones that are closest to the work, and thus they'll be best equipped to make the right decisions on a day-to-day basis when it comes to the product. So autonomy is super, super important, especially if you have a very senior team like we have. The most important thing, I think, is to avoid micromanagement, because that just kills people's motivation and engagement, which I've seen a lot in the past as well. So how do you get that autonomy but still make sure that people move in the same direction, so that you get that strength and that focus of going after the most important goals to help achieve the company's strategy? And that's what ShapeUp tries to do, is to find that balance between autonomy and alignment. So without autonomy, you get micromanagement, but without alignment, you get anarchy. Maybe you get chaos. But too much alignment becomes micromanagement as well. So it's important to find that balance. And I think ShapeUp does this really well. And there's lots, like, this is more than a full podcast in and of its own, I think. But the most important things is to set a direction, like to plan work at the right level, basically. And in ShapeUp, that level is you write project pitches where each project pitch should have a clear goal. So what are we trying to achieve? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And it has a rich context. So why is this goal important? What value do we think this will bring to our users or the company? And that context is super important, because that will really help everyone working on that project make those decisions that they are going to have to make. If they don't understand the why, then it's really hard to make the right decisions to achieve the what in a good way. So the what and the why, super important. And then it also has some rough ideas for a solution, just to give kind of a starting point or set that direction to help the team kind of hit the ground running. But it's very, very far from a specification. There's no detailed user stories or a backlog of any kind. There's no finished design mockups or even wireframes usually. So some rough ideas for a starting point and the direction for the solution. But it's up to the team then to kind of explore that further and make the necessary decisions. But then it also has, and this is also one of the really important points, it has some constraints. And those constraints is what will really help the team focus and make sure to ship in a good way. Because it's the more open-ended the project is, the easier it is to get distracted or dig yourself into a rabbit hole somewhere and get stuck. And then that is what leads to things getting delayed or not shipping and so on. And so those constraints can be specific to the project, of course. So for the team stories project that we mentioned, during those first 6 weeks, we set the constraint that, we are going to focus completely on creating stories through the mobile app to start with. We're not going to add features to the web application for adding new stories and so on. And that was a simple constraint that let us let's just focus on this part and make that really good. So those types of constraints, we can add some of those. But then the most important constraint, I think, is the time constraint. It's working in these 6-week cycles, like we mentioned. And that means that, it's fixed time, but a variable scope. So since there's no detailed backlog or so on, the actual scope is very flexible. It's up to the team to determine the scope. So it's up to the team to decide what is the best possible solution that we can design, build, and ship that will help us achieve the goal of this project within these 6 weeks, within the time we have available. And so we don't work with estimates. We work with appetite instead.
Yeah. The appetite is maybe I can talk if you want to rest a bit. So, and the appetite is very interesting thing because the Joachims are. I'm not want to say managers, something like the co-shaper or something like that. And is the coach or something like that maybe. And when he asking to us what's the appetite of this project, because we are calling project all things, small, large, or medium sizes. So I couldn't get it. Appetite. Why? But I start to understand strongly what is so important. Yeah. Because otherwise, as a developer, I can lose myself because it's never end. Yeah. Because it's adding something and deleting and improving and blah, blah, blah. It should be a scope. Yeah. And the appetite. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So the appetite is about, instead of using an estimate and saying how long do we think it'll take us to build all of these things, to build this scope, basically, and never being right about that.
Yeah.
We changed the question to say, how much time do we want to spend on trying to achieve this goal? And then we adapt the scope to fit into that time, basically. So every project has like a 1 week version, 1 month version, a 1 year version.
Yeah.
Every project can grow and shrink if you only, depending on the trade-offs and the decisions that you make, how much time you spend on details and all of that stuff. But by working kind of backwards from the appetite or from the time we want to spend on it, we can make sure to make those decisions in a conscious way early. And by the way, to let the developers and designers closest to the work make those decisions early so that we can actually make sure to ship something by the end of our cycle. And that momentum of always shipping things gets really addictive because as a developer, there's nothing more demoralizing, except for maybe micromanagement, than working on a project that never ships. It just gets delayed and delayed and delayed. And it's so frustrating to work in a project.
Because they never talk about the scopes or slides.
Yeah.
Think, okay, we don't need to explain what are they, but I really understood the scope, exactly. The slices are so important.
Yeah.
Sometimes we couldn't decide it very well before the beginning of the cycle. But if you do more practice and fail or not fail, I mean learning something from our failures, so we can do good slice and scopes. So we can ship little by little. But end of the cycle, we have very huge projects that shipped.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's about prioritizing your time and deciding as a team what is the most important thing for us to work on right now to make sure that we can actually ship this by the end of the cycle. And sometimes that means, okay, it's not important to add more details or more polish to this one feature right now. It's more important to move to finish the next feature so that we can get a good whole project that we can ship by the end of the cycle. But in some cases, it's actually more important to focus on, well, actually this piece needs to be really well polished and really high quality. So let's prioritize working more on that now, and let's cut these other things that we initially thought we wanted to include in this project, but they're not as important to include in this cycle where we want to really ship the first version of something. So that trade-off is something that you can't determine ahead of time in the planning of the project necessarily. It's something that the designers and developers need to discover along the way as they get further and further into the project, but to also have the power to make those decisions themselves and not have to rely on someone else telling them what to do.
And by the way, I really like I can acting like a shaper, even if I'm a developer in Teamtailor.
Yeah.
This is a very good way because we don't need to wait. For example, some regular software companies, there are lots of product managers. They are talking with the customers and they are understanding their problems and they are requesting to us, or us, I mean the developers and the designers, and they are writing some, scenarios, or what was Jira called it, stories, they're writing stories and we are implementing these stories to real life and the production. But here I can write a pitch as a developer, but I can act like a shaper, which is very nice.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well. Shaping is not like working as a shaper, which is in some ways a better title for what I do than a product manager. But working in that role is not about saying that others aren't allowed to do this. It's more of saying that, okay, it's my responsibility to make sure that this gets done, and that's where I will focus a lot of my time. But designers and developers, they can do shaping as well. And that's the same if you look inside one of these small project teams where we have usually one designer and one developer. Of course, a developer can have design input as well, and a designer can have technical input, though it's not about creating boxes and then locking people into those boxes. It's more about clarifying or providing focus and clarifying responsibilities, but then collaborating in a good way.
Yeah, and another fun part of this shape up, I think, we call it 6 weeks, but it's originally 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks is called cool down in the book. The shape up.
Yeah.
So, but we call it innovation. We call them innovation and improvement week. What are they?
Yeah, so we've done it a little bit differently than what 37 Signals describe in the book. So after the 6-week project part of the cycle, there's a 2-week cool down phase, like you said. And in the book, that's described as just a time to work on all of those other things that come up that aren't really part of the project. And that's super important, because if you've worked with Scrum, for example, you might be used to working in, for example, 2-week sprints. Mm-hmm. And as soon as one sprint ends, you start the next sprint. It becomes sprint. And you sprint yourself to death, basically. And that's not a very sustainable or productive way of working in the end, in my experience, at least. So I love that the cool down phase is kind of built into this, because it's a really important phase. But what we've done at Teamtailor is to structure it a little bit to increase kind of the focus of the two different parts of the cooldown. So instead of having 1 2-week cooldown phase where there's nothing really set in or determined about what to work on during that time, we have split it into 2 halves. So first we have Innovation Week. And Innovation Week is where we take a break from focusing on shipping and instead focus on experimenting with new ideas for the product, or experimenting with new technology or new ways of working, or anything really, just so that we can continue to learn and have fun along the way as well. And a lot of the ideas that we experiment with during Innovation Week actually later on becomes full projects during one of our 6-week cycles. So that's where we get a lot of the innovative ideas for Teamtailor, comes directly from the product team experimenting with things during Innovation Week. So that's super important, both for the developers and designers on the product team to continue learning and having fun and being able to shift focus from shipping. But it's also really important for the product strategy and for helping us differentiate ourselves from our competitors, for example. If we only listen to what our customers are asking, for example, we'll build exactly what everyone else already has.
Yeah.
So that's not what we want to do. So we want to, again, find the balance between, of course, listening to our customers, but also working on things that our customers didn't know that they wanted yet. And Team Stories is a perfect example of that.
Sometimes the customers, they don't realize what they want.
Yeah.
They can't explain what they want, what they need.
Exactly.
And while listening them, understanding what they need to be strong. So the Innovation Week is very nice for that.
Yeah.
We can find our way, and reading product feedback channel on Slack, and sometimes finding the good way, clicking somewhere in Teamtailor.
Yeah.
So this is really good because Teamtailor use Teamtailor.
Exactly. Yeah.
So as you said, this Team Stories was born in Innovation Week.
Yeah.
And OpenAI Think was born in Innovation Week, right?
Which one?
Copilot.
Exactly.
I said OpenAI, sorry. Copilot Think was born in the Innovation Week. And we are
and that's a great example of all of a sudden there's a brand new technology out in the world when OpenAI released its API, and giving time and space for developers to experiment with that new technology directly led to the birth of what we call Copilot, which is integrating OpenAI in a really deep and meaningful way into our product. So really letting our users get help with writing job descriptions, of course, but then also getting more into details like figuring out or suggesting skills and traits for evaluate for different jobs, and suggesting good interview questions to evaluate those skills and traits and things like that. So that was another really good example of how spending that time during Innovation Week experimenting with new technology and new ideas can really benefit our users, and that part is also really fun for us in the product team.
We can say in the cycles, I mean the 6 weeks, we are cooking something, and we are fixing something, an improvement thing or a very small things, and we are fixing. Sometimes it should be medium size. And in the Innovation Week, we are understanding what we have and doing some hack in the product. But I guess if I were a listener for this podcast, I could imagine how Teamtailor helped the customer. Meanwhile, I mean, how can answer the customer questions immediately, fixing the production problems. Are we waiting the improvement? No. We have a lovely team called Tech Heroes. What is Tech Hero?
That's a really good point, actually, because one of the keys, of course, to working this way, when you have these really small teams of 2 developers and 1 designers that take on a full project and take it from start to finish to actually shipping it within 6 weeks, that is only possible if those teams can really focus on those projects and not get distracted or pulled away by having to fix bugs or fetch custom reports or something like that for other parts of the business. All of these little requests that are needed to handle to support the rest of the business and to support our customers, but that make it really hard to focus on building new things in a productive way, where you need longer stretches of uninterrupted time to really focus and be creative in a good way. So the way we handled that is with having a small separate team, like you mentioned, called Tech Heroes. And so we rotate that every cycle. So every cycle, new developers take kind of a turn working as the Tech Heroes, and they don't work in general on a project like this during the 6 weeks. Instead, they are there to react and respond to requests that come in either from our support team, and they might need some technical help solving customer issues, or other parts of the company that need some help. Maybe the finance team needs to get some data, or maybe a customer has deleted some data by mistake and needs some help restoring that, or all of these different things. Maybe our CEO needs to pull some extra data for a meeting with investors or something like that. All of those little requests, the Tech Heroes are able to handle, which lets the rest of the product team working on these projects really focus on the projects that they have. So that's super important. And you mentioned the Improvement Week as well, which we didn't talk about. So Innovation Week, again, is the first week during this 2-week cool down between cycles. The second week is called Improvement Week, and that is where everyone in the product team works together to do small improvements in the product, in the user interface, or behind the scenes in the code base, upgrading libraries maybe, or doing some refactoring. But primarily we try to focus on concrete improvements for our users, but things that take maybe, somewhere between 1 hour and maximum 2 days. So small things that don't warrant a full project in and of themselves. But when we have like 40 people working on these things for a whole week, there's a huge impact to the level of quality in the product. So all of those small things are really important as well, especially when you look at them together. So having the time to work on those things as well in a dedicated way is really powerful for improving the product and the quality of the product. But it also, again, helps support that focus during the 6-week project, where you can defer some of those things that you want to improve, or maybe you get some feedback from customers and you want to do some tweaks and so on. But by deferring them to Improvement Week, that lets us stay focused on actually shipping the projects we're working on during the 6-week cycle.
Yeah, we have been talking about lots of 6-week cycle teams, but we mentioned the Tech Hero team, Tech Heroes team, and which is focus team. We have more focus team because I wouldn't like to pass them because I'm the member of them. One of them, and we have a few focus team like integrations and the platform and the career site and these co-pilot things. And what's the purpose of the focus team? Because we have cycles team, and it's changing cycle by cycle, but we have the focus team as well. But I couldn't see anything about these focus team in the shape-up book.
No.
Did we make it?
Yeah, I guess so. The purpose of the focus teams is that there are a few areas of the platform that really benefit from keeping the context of that domain for a longer period of time. Because like you said, in the regular teams for the 6-week cycles, those teams change from each cycle. So one cycle you could be working together with one developer and one designer, and then in the next cycle you have 2 new colleagues that you're working on a project together with. And that's great because that really helps spread knowledge across the team and lets people work with lots of different parts of the platform. But there are some areas that are more complicated or can really benefit from having the same people working on them for a longer period of time because they become really experts in that domain. And the Tech Hero part is a little bit different since the teams changed there. So there it's more about doing important work that needs to be done to let the other teams really focus on their work. But then we have the other focus teams, like the platform team, for example, that are focused on our infrastructure. So our servers and whole development, like the DevOps part of things.
That developer use.
Exactly, the developer experience and things like that. And that's a complex part of its own. So it's important that they can focus on that. Analytics is another area as well that is really, really complex because there's a lot of data that is generated in the platform, and our users want to be able to, of course, generate reports and understand that data and use those metrics to guide their recruitment. So we have a small team that is focused on that, and integrations is another really, really important part. We have hundreds of integrations with Teamtailor, and that's a critical part for our users to be able to get a seamless workflow between, well, we mentioned a board as an example where you start in Teamtailor and then you continue the candidate experience in the HR system with onboarding and so on. So having good integrations between Teamtailor and HR systems is really important. But there's also lots of other systems that you might be using during the recruitment process. Things like external tools for doing code tests, for example, or other types of assessment or testing, taking digital reference checks or background checks, for example. So that's another area. And then there's all of the hundreds of different job boards that we integrate with as well, so that you can very easily publish and promote your job to reach more candidates. So integrations are a huge part of the Teamtailor platform, and they're also quite complex and a fairly separate part of the platform. So it makes sense to have a team that is focused on that can keep that context for a longer period of time and become experts in that domain. And then we have different parts of the integration team, and one, of course, is the import team, which you're part of.
Yeah.
Which is a super important team, because that's where basically all of or most of our customers come into us through the import team, because most of them have pre-existing data from maybe they've just been using Google Sheets or Excel to manage their recruitment before, or they've been using a different applicant tracking system, and they have this database of candidates that they've talked to before and so on. And they want to bring all of that with them when they start using Teamtailor. So being able to give them a really smooth onboarding experience as customers.
Yeah, that's the important.
Yeah, it's super important, but it's also a really critical role, because you're handling potentially sensitive personal data for the customers and so on. So you want to really know what you're doing when you're importing this, and that's why it's really nice to have you and Mustafa working in this team for a long period of time, so that you can be really experts in this area and build the tools that you need to work with this in an effective way, and so on. So yeah, to really give this area the attention it deserves, since it's so important.
Yeah, you're right. It's the onboarding things, and this is the first team the customer face with in Teamtailor.
Exactly.
So it's so important, because they're coming from another ATS, which is our competitor. So this is so important, to being nice. And the salespeople are facing with this problem, and they communicate with the customer with I can't say within an hour sometimes, but the FA but the importance is, as you said, the data is so important. It should be lost or stalled somewhere. And another part is the process should be smooth and as soon as fast.
Yeah, and correct as well, right?
Yeah, correct as well. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes we can't support some data because they're coming from the very complex database ATSs, and so we can import and we can say, all right, our database is different. We can't import your whole data, but it's going well, and we are building a product for doing these imports on the UI, not the using console, because it's so dangerous. And I did some mistakes. So because it's the production console, and it's not good, I know, but we are so busy to doing import and building products. Yeah. But after understanding how we work with the guide, the shape of guide, and nowadays the things are so, not that I can say so easy, it's becoming easy. Yeah. Easier than past. Anyway, we have been recording for 1 hour, so but we can continue. It doesn't matter. So I would like to talk about the actually developer and designer happiness in Teamtailor. So yeah, I know we have lots of benefits for our workers, but like the work away that we did, that we are doing now. So and courses and innovation week as well. So why these kind of things important for us? Maybe we can talk about the first, what we are giving and why we are giving. For example, workaways. It's so huge thing. And can you explain?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that the biggest benefit that we have, and the reason that we are able to attract so many very talented and senior developers and that they stay for a long time, is primarily our way of working with ShapeUp. And so then a lot of our other benefits that we have are there to help support that. Like, how can we make that way of working more fun and more rewarding and also more effective? And of course, things like courses or other types of training, like skill development, is one part of that, to help people continuously learn new things and grow and improve. But then there are other things that are a little bit more abstract, I guess. So I mentioned that we're a distributed team. Yeah. We have, and of course, but for our listeners, we have people primarily in Sweden, which is our headquarters, but in Sweden we're distributed over many different locations. So not everyone is in the same city. We have our headquarters in Stockholm. We have another group in Gothenburg, where I'm based, and then in Linköping, which is another city in Sweden, and then a few that are fully remote in Sweden. But then we have, I think, 6 developers in
six
Turkey
developers
now.
in Turkey.
And
but we don't have any office in Turkey, by the way. We
No,
separate
because
a whole
exactly.
country.
In Turkey, we have people in Istanbul, in Ankara, in Ünye, where you are, and in Antalya, where Melik is. So we're spread out, and in Bodrum as well. Yeah, so we have people not all over Turkey, but in many different parts of Turkey. We have also people in 2 different parts of Poland, but mostly in Krakow. We have 2 people in Portugal, and we have 1 in Spain. So we're spread out over different parts of
No
Europe.
developers from UK.
Not anymore. We used to have a developer in
Yeah.
the UK, but now we don't have anyone there right now. Though I think Arif has been talking about moving there at some point. So we'll see. But with these teams, we also don't really take where someone is based into account when assigning teams. So it's not like the people here in Turkey work together all of the time, and the people in Krakow work together all of the time, or the people in the Linköping office work together all of the time. So there's some differences in the focus teams, but in the general product team, you are usually working together with someone who's in a very different location than you are. So working in a distributed way. And that works great, but we think it works even better when you're able to meet up in person from time to time and get to know each other and have fun together and so on. And that helps build trust within the team and build stronger relationships. And those relationships and that trust will really make communication and collaboration much easier when you're working remotely. And so that's why we try to invest really heavily in facilitating those meetings as well. And we have 2 main ways of doing that. First, we've talked about the work away concept, which is basically everyone in the product team has a budget for self-organizing team trips. So here with the work away we run here in Antalya now, for example, that was just Melike lives here, and someone said, why don't we get a group together and travel to Antalya?
Someone said, use that.
Okay, it was me.
Yeah.
But it could have been anyone.
Exactly, it's good to be anyone. No one says, as not my manager, Yorkas, don't say, go to Istanbul or meet the team in Krakow or something like this.
Yeah. It's not a manager decision.
For example, we tried to go into Berlin in August.
Yeah.
We failed because we didn't. Because of the visa issues.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't find more people because we have some limitations. By the way.
Yeah.
Maybe you will explain.
Yeah, exactly. So the budget is about 1,500 euros per 6 months, and so that is the constraint. And then there are some other constraints about how it should be a certain number of people. I don't know if we have a hard limit, but if it's just like 2 people, we don't think that that's kind of enough value for it. So it should be ideally 4 or more people that get together. So you get like a good group and more connections can be created that way, basically. And so someone proposes the idea, and then people can say, oh, that sounds interesting, I want to join that as well. And then they decide, okay, which dates should we go?
For example, today, the Arif proposed going to Sofia, Bulgaria, in Bulgaria in April 24, and he proposed, and I said join. I can join, and that's it.
Exactly, and so now you'll see, is someone else interested in joining? And of course, you and Arif will probably reach out to people. Hey, do you want to join us? And you try to encourage your colleagues to join you and so on. But anyone can decide to join. And then you'll talk about, okay, how are we going to get there and where are we going to stay? Usually we rent like an Airbnb together or something like that. Mm-hmm. So we have some place to work during the days as well. And it's not a vacation. It is a work trip. So you're traveling together and you're working together from a place during the day. So it's like regular work days in that sense. But then first of all, you're together so you can work together in person while you're there, but you're also together once work finishes. And so then you can go out and have nice dinners together and things like that, and have fun together along the way as well. So it's a nice combination of getting to know each other while working together, because that's a great way to get to know people you're working with too. but also getting to know each other kind of outside of work and building those relationships. So yeah, that's Workaways, and that's one of my favorite things as well, because I think it's so fun and valuable. But then we also have a larger annual company trip, which is...
Yeah, this is another story.
It's another story, exactly, and it's a whole separate beast. So usually for the Workaways, we're between 4 and 10 people. So it's like a nice group. It's you can...
And this is for just product people.
Yeah, exactly. This is the product team. And the reason it's just the product team is because we're the only ones that are distributed in this way. We have team members outside of the product team in Teamtailor all across the world. So it's a distributed company, but most of those other teams have most people in the team together in one location. So it's like one team in Colombia, one team in Paris. New Zealand, one team in Paris. Yeah. Exactly. So it's the teams are distributed, but the people within the team are not necessarily distributed. But in product, we have the people within the team are distributed. So the Workaways are a way of bringing those people together. But since we have all of these distributed teams across the whole company, we want to bring them together as well. And so that's why we have the annual company trip, where right now we have about 300 people in the company. So last month we gathered everyone that was able to make it, which was I think 272 people. And we all traveled to Sicily in Italy, where we'd taken over a resort and a beautiful island in the Mediterranean, and spent the week together there, having a lot of fun.
It was a wait for me. For you,
you got there early.
Yeah, I got there early, and I'm back later than you. But it was amazing because we couldn't join the Croatia trip.
They had visa issues there too.
Issue, right? So, and another part, I think by the way, sorry, I got a question. Before I joined the Teamtailor, I know the Teamtailor is Teamtailor working that had distributed teams, but I think Teamtailor is working on site before pandemic, as I know. So, but after pandemic that I joined the Teamtailor, so they convert their work style as remotely, full remotely, because I'm working full remote, not hybrid or something like this. I'm not going to office. I'm working directly from home to Stockholm. So I really worry about what happened. Not what happened. I had some issues about converting the working style. I think it couldn't be easy for the big company, because the Teamtailor is not a small company. I can't say it's a small company. It's a big company as a product members or the whole company. But the company changed whole working style to remotely or hybrids nowadays. But do you know what happened, or what are the issues Teamtailor faced with during the process?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer really, because
maybe David and Richard knows that.
Exactly. I joined during the pandemic. And quite late during the pandemic. I joined last year in 2022. So I wasn't there before, so I didn't see the transition firsthand. But I think all companies are facing these challenges in some way. And I know that even within Teamtailor, it varies from team to team. So we talked about the difference between how we're distributed in the product team and some other teams. And I know that in some other teams, they work a lot more on site and have more requirements about being in the office a certain number of days. So it's still hybrid, but kind of a stricter hybrid in some sense than we have. But we don't have a company policy about that. It's up to each team to figure out what are the needs for this specific team and for the members of this team. And for us in the product team, we think that the kind of remote first approach works really well for us, given that we invest so much in things like the Workaways and so on to bring people together regularly or several times per year, because we think that is kind of a requirement or at least a really important thing to make remote work as effective as possible, because we invest in building these relationships that will make it easier. And we also think that when possible, we like hiring in clusters. So in Turkey, we have people in lots of different cities, But the fact that we have 6 people in Turkey and not 6 people in 6 different countries still makes it a little bit easier. And so Turkey is a very large country, but it's still a little bit like a cluster for us. So it makes it easier so when we're traveling here to Antalya now, it's easier for you and Mustafa in this case to come visit here as well, compared to if you were living in a completely different country or a completely different part of the world outside of Europe, for example. So we have it's not really restrictions, but it's more things that we're striving towards. So we strive to hire people in these clusters. So that could be near one of our offices, for example, or it could be in Turkey where we already have strong team members, and trying to kind of minimize the distances in that way so that it's easier and there's more opportunity to meet up in person when you want to. But we don't have, like, even for the people working in Stockholm where we have our headquarters, they still work remotely most of the time. Or they work from home most of the time. Some people like coming into the office every day. Some people like coming into the office once or twice per week. Some people come into the office maybe once or twice per month, and that's fine. But what's good is that they have an opportunity to either come into the office and work in person when they want, or just to meet up and go out and grab some dinner together or something like that when they want. So I think that is valuable. And for people like you and me who work either fully remotely in your case, or me, I'm in Gothenburg where we have just 3 people in the product team. So that's a very small group. Me personally, I feel that to be a little bit isolating sometimes. And that's why I appreciate the workaways. So I know you feel the same way. And so that's why I really appreciate the workaways and being able to actually meet up with the people that I don't get to spend so much time with. But I also appreciate having at least 2 colleagues in Gothenburg that I can meet up with more often.
Yeah, it's so important working in person.
Yeah.
Not every day or every week, but at least per maybe 6 months personally because of the workaways.
Yeah, okay. I think it's very individual.
It's very individual, but I'm talking about the company perspective, by the way.
Exactly.
I'm talking about general. Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah.
So we talk a lot about company workaways because we are. So maybe find at the end of our podcast, maybe we can talk a bit about our interview process and onboarding process for developers, because I know the many developers listening to this podcast. So how is our interview process? Because my interview process was very different than now, because I know that I referred to Maliki as a junior developer, not intern developer.
Yeah.
So I realized that it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
So
I think that's my fault, maybe.
No. It's very nice, because when in my interview process, Teamtailor had plenty of people than now. So, but now we have lots of people and lots of responsibilities. It should have been changed.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But I'm asking how it's going on and the onboarding, which is very important for developers.
Yeah, for sure. So we have 5 main steps in the recruitment process. The first, of course, is the application. And we're happy, of course, that we're able to use our own product for this and to give candidates a really great candidate experience through the application and then the whole recruitment process. But what we focus on in the application process is to ask questions to get to know candidates a little bit more already in that stage, rather than having them write a long cover letter or just focusing on the CV, which is not always super interesting or valuable. Instead, we try to focus on asking some good questions that lets us get to know the candidates from the start in the way that we want. Then the second step is 2 short online tests, 1 logic test and 1 personality test. And we do this early in the process because it gives us a different type of information than we get from reviewing a candidate's answers to these questions or their CV, or even later in the interview process, because all of those can be quite subjective. Whereas these tests are scientifically validated, more objective data. That does not mean that are the absolute truth, but it's a different type of information that's a nice complement. And it's a very scalable way of reviewing lots of candidates as well. And those tests take about 30 minutes. The candidates do them online. They get the results of the tests straight away. And most candidates find the tests and the results actually quite interesting and fun as well. And those can then be used as a basis for discussion in the third step, which is an interview, usually with me, or if it's for the integration team, it's with Jorkas. And there we try to focus on going more in depth into the current situation and experience of the developer, more about, how they're working right now or what they've been doing in their previous positions or current position, and looking forward into what are the things that they're looking for, what are the things that they value, that they think are important when it comes to finding a job that is a good fit for them. And of course things like what they think they can contribute to us in the team, and equally important, what they don't want to do. Because development can mean a lot of different things, and it's important to know if there are certain types of work or tasks or development that you don't want to do or don't think you're really good at or want to improve in, then it's good to talk about that early, I think, as well. So that's the interview. And then the fourth step is code assignment. Yeah. So we give candidates a small project that takes usually around 3 hours. And they submit a pull request with their assignment, and we review that and make sure to give quite detailed feedback to the candidates. And then the final step is an interview with two of our developers, where the candidate and our developers will start with discussing their code assignment. And it's really that discussion that's the most important part. It's not the code itself. It's more interesting to hear the candidate talk about how they approached the assignment. Yeah. What were the challenges for them with it? Why did they make the decisions they made? And how did they think, basically? Because that's what helps us understand how they work. But also if they have some other projects that they can show, then we really like looking at that and hearing more about kind of some real world projects in that sense as well. And they can have a more technical discussion, and they, of course, the candidates can also learn more about what it's like working as a developer in the team by asking questions to our developers. And that's it.
There's very, I think I can't say it's long process, but sometimes it can be long. Sometimes the company can be busy, and the giving response should have more time. Yeah. So
it's that is a good point, and it varies a lot. Sometimes the whole process takes 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes 4 weeks or even 6 weeks, depending both on kind of how busy we are internally here, but sometimes also depending on how busy the candidate is, because when they're doing the code assignments, for example, or taking the tests and so on, they want to make sure that they have time to focus on that, to do it in a good way. And maybe they're really busy at their current job that week. Yeah. And so maybe it's the next week and so on. So it varies a lot how quickly it is, but it can be quite quick. And usually if the candidate is in a rush, like maybe they're in other interview processes and something like that, then we always try to make sure that we can do it within like 2 weeks or something like that.
Okay, let's think about if we hire the candidate.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
Yeah, the onboarding. The onboarding is really interesting and an important part, like you mentioned as well. We recently started timing the onboarding with the flow of the cycle, which I think makes a big difference actually, because it's very different from a candidate perspective, or from a new hire perspective rather. If you're starting and you get kind of thrown into a team in the middle of a project and you have no idea what's going on with the project, you have to learn everything about the code base and the company and how we work and the people on the team and so on. Everything is new, and meanwhile the team you're in are trying to really focus on delivering the project, and so maybe they don't feel like they can spend as much time as needed to help onboard the new person and so on. So instead of doing it kind of randomly by when someone's available, which is what we tried to do in the past, now we're more strict about kind of when we set the start date so that people start in between cycles instead. So we have them start during improvement week, which is the 1 week before the cycle starts. Mm-hmm. Because during improvement week, there's again no strict projects going on. There's no real no one's stressed about, I need to ship this thing, I don't have time to. Everyone has more time and more flexibility to give the new joiners the support they need to get started. And so they have 1 week where they can focus on getting introduced to the company and the code base and their new colleagues and our way of working. And we do that through a combination of some more structured sessions in the beginning of the onboarding week, where there are more presentations and introductions and so on. But then very quickly, we let them loose. Well, first of all, we pair them up with an onboarding buddy, which is really important as well, that they have someone that they can work together with during their onboarding and get support from during their onboarding and ask questions and so on. But rather than having a lot of meetings and sessions and so on through the whole project or whole first week, we do that just the first 2 days, when it's nice to have some more structure when you're completely new. And then we let them explore together with their onboarding buddy. And so it's improvement week, so everyone's working on these small improvement tasks. And so usually they'll start by doing a lot of pair programming together with their onboarding buddy, tackling some of these small tasks together so they can get introduced to the product and the code base that way by being more hands-on. And then after the first week, we'll start the next cycle, and then they'll become members of one of our regular cycle teams. And usually we do that by adding them as a third developer. So like I said, normally it's 2 developers and 1 designer. When we have a new hire, they join as kind of a third developer. And then we have 2 of the developers that are existing members of the team. One of them will be the onboarding buddy, focused on the onboarding. And then the other one will take more of a kind of project lead role so that they can, of course, everyone helps out and the roles are fluid, but it's nice to have some clearer responsibilities that way. And then the new hire works together with that team, doing a lot of pair programming maybe in the beginning, or as much as they want. And right away they're part of actually contributing to the project or to the product, and part of the team, being very hands-on, but also there's time and support to help them learn and to help them get up to speed in a good way. Yeah,
thank you for good explanations about the onboarding and the hiring process. It was very detailed. I learned lots of things because actually I know these kind of things, but hearing again and again, it can be good for me. All right, I think we touched lots of things about Teamtailor. Would you like to add more things?
I think I've probably added way too much already. Was this the longest episode you had?
No.
Okay, that's good.
No, if you want anything to tell, you can share with us.
No, I'm happy. It's really nice to talk to you, Andre. It's great to be here in person with you in Antalya. And nice to sit down and have this chat together. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much to be here, CJ, because we're planning these things online. And so we converted the offline when we decided to coming to Antalya or doing the workaways. And okay, it's over, guys, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.